We have the notice of the amended agenda, the Polk County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. And the clerk for the receipt of evidence.
The County Board of Supervisors December 15th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in 2 places, posted on the county website on December 4th, 2020, and was published in a legal newspaper the week of December 7th, 2020. In addition, on Friday, December 4th, 2020 at 7:04 p.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting along with any available proposed resolutions to supervisors via email or mail. The notice of amended agenda was posted in the Government Center, posted on the county website, and copies of such notice of meeting with any additional proposed resolutions were distributed to supervisors and media via email or mail on Friday, December 11th, 2020.
And is that proper notice?
It is.
Roll call.
Brad Olson.
Here.
Doug Rowdy. Here in the other room, right?
Is there a mic on, or do they have specific mic?
Sorry, here.
Okay. There we have Doug Rowdy. Steve Warndall.
Here.
Rich Nelson.
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc. Here. Dan Rook.
Here.
Michael Pritchard.
Let me check real quick, make sure it's not one of these. Mr. Pritchard, are you on the line?
I am on the line on the telephone.
All right.
Sharon Kelly.
Here.
Kim O'Connell. Amy Middleton.
Here.
Jay Luke.
Here.
Fran Duncanson. Here. Russ Arcan.
Here.
John Bonaprise.
Here.
And Joe Donnelly.
Here. Kim is absent.
Excused.
Yeah, excused.
So we do have 14 present.
Pledge of Allegiance, John.
Sharon Kelly will lead us in Supervisor Kelly, and then following that, we'll have a minute of silence for a couple of former members.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you want to remain standing, Charlie Silberg worked for the Highway Department for 32 years. He ended up as the Highway Commissioner. And Marv Casperson, can't tell you the district because that was back when we had 23 members, but I served 8 years with Marv Casperson, and just a super supervisor, very much involved when we built the Human Services and Health Development and our court center. We'll have a moment of silence. Thank you, Supervisor. If you get to talk to any of the family members, thank them for half of the.
Mark Casperson was one of the smoothest ballroom dancers with the largest feet I've ever seen. I think he was 15 or something like that.
Yeah, he sure was.
They were good dancers.
Perfect gentleman.
Maybe take a pause right now. I think too, maybe Supervisor Olson is now chairing the Environmental Services Committee, and just wanted to make a comment also.
I think we need to remember Supervisor O'Connell as he's having some health issues here and keep him in our thoughts and prayers.
I talked to the family this week, and he's had a trachea put in, and he's taken radiation and chemo with the family. So really needs our prayers.
Thanks, Brad. Number 5, we'll just raise of hands if anyone has a conflict with anything on the agenda at the time. We have
Mr. Chair.
a
Mr. Chair, I think this is Amy, and one thing I just wanted to note is that this item number 7D, I think it should be disclosed that Nelson Construction was the builder on that parcel. What level of conflict of interest that rises to, I don't know, but I just thought that should be disclosed. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no conflict of interest there.
Okay. Thank you.
Approval of the agenda as presented.
Okay, first and second. All in favor by saying aye.
Hey, I've got a comment. Hello,
Yep.
I had a comment. I would like to remove, this is Mike Pritchard. I'd like to remove item 7D from the consent agenda. There are some 40 residents plus or 40 residences plus who are objecting to that action, and I think it requires some discussion by the county board. I would certainly be in favor of having some discussion about that resolution.
Well, we've already.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I guess I'm handicapped. Your technical person was going to call me if I had a problem logging on. I did have a problem logging on, and this is a matter that I think requires county board discussion. And
Yeah, well, Mike,
I think,
Mike,
yeah,
you chose to do it over the phone. I can't blame county staff for you not being here. We're going to ask Corporation Counsel, since we already voted to approve the agenda, I'm going to consult with her first.
well, okay.
Yeah, we made a motion in a second, and we all said aye, didn't we?
There was no request for any discussion on the motion.
So even without amending the agenda, once you get to consent, it could be appropriate to make a motion at that time
To talk about that.
to talk about it, remove it, or separate it and make
Okay.
it two separate votes. If it goes beyond certain things, I'll provide some insight and information. But
Sure.
just from a procedural standpoint, I think even if you approve the agenda, you can still then ask later to take those up separately so there can be a discussion.
All right. Okay, Supervisor Pritchard? Mike?
When would the, yes,
Okay.
I have a question.
Mike?
When, yes,
Mike? All right, just hold on a second. Under the next item, under matters of offer for adoption and the consent agenda, we are there right now. So the agenda's been approved. We will go ahead, and at this point, we're under matters of adoption for the consent agenda. If you want to make a motion to talk about D, and you get a second, and you get a majority vote, we'll talk about it. So go ahead and make your, you have a motion. Tell me what your motion is.
the motion is to move item 7D, resolution number 5720, off the consent agenda for discussion on the merits.
Okay, so we need a second.
I'll second it.
So Duncanson seconded it. All in favor by saying,
We'll have a discussion on the,
well, I'm not going to do it unless there's a majority that wants to have a discussion.
that discussion would be part of the protocol.
Discussion about moving it.
About moving it. They want to move it to talk about it. You know, I can just, so the motion is to move it so we can discuss about it off of the consent agenda.
Well, I thought I'm sorry, I thought the consent agenda was approval of that resolution, included approval of that resolution.
It is.
But if that's,
So hold on, Mike. We're working through your motion. We've had a second. Corporation Counsel, would you like to explain to us where we're at?
Sure. So if, I understand there's a lot of public comment on that topic. The majority, if not the entirety of the public comment, is not about the rezone in and of itself. It's about the potential for a conditional use application that could come down the road. And I just would caution anybody from making a decision on the rezone because of an anticipated conditional use. That would be very easy to overturn, because the only thing the county can decide on a rezone is whether the new zoning request, that new zoning application, would be consistent with the surrounding area and whether those uses meet with the comprehensive plan. And the town has already passed it. So I know there's a lot of controversy about the anticipated conditional use, and that battle is appropriate and important, but that needs to happen when the conditional use application comes in, not to hold up a rezone, because then any decision that is made based upon that anticipated conditional use application would be easy to overturn. So I just want to make sure that you're talking about it just as the narrow issue of whether the rezone in and of itself would be appropriate.
And Mike, hold on, you're not recognized. I'm not going to let you just jump in, Mike, whenever you feel like it. So you're going to have to wait till you're recognized. Since you're not here, we can't see you raise your hand. So you're going to be last. And I will talk about that since Supervisor Middleton brought up this conflict. And the only reason I'll bring it up is because she also brought it up in environmental services. And yeah, Nelson Construction Services, the company that I work for and a part owner of, that did a project there about 7 years ago. We built these people a house. They never finished it. Supervisor Middleton also made false statements in environmental services that says, you know, there's innuendos out there that it's a commercial building, or that there's commercial plumbing in the building, or the building was shut down. And unfortunately, Supervisor Middleton, as a supervisor, I feel like really steps over the bounds by bringing up facts that she is totally unaware of. And here again tonight, she tries to throw that comment out there. Our company works on hundreds of projects over the last 5 years. So this idea that I worked on something 5 years ago or 7 years ago, that I have zero issues with it today, and I just want to make that clear. Supervisor Luke.
Can I just ask a question in reference to this? Did it not go past the town?
Chair, I'll let the Chair of Environmental Services, the Vice Chair, explain this specific item.
It actually, when it passed, Osceola on a 2-to-1 vote, came to the Environmental Services.
Planning and Township.
Yep. Was kicked back to the town, which had the same vote again, to send it back to us at the County and Environmental Services, where there was once again discussion. And really what it came down to is, as Malia stated earlier, is that, you know, some people wanted us to use facts that we couldn't use. I mean, we know that the potential is there for it to be an event center. We don't get to use that in the discussion of a rezone. They can apply for anything. It doesn't have to be an event center. It could be anything under that new zoning district now. The fact that we seem to know that up front, what they're going to do, the committee could not use and cannot use to make that decision. There again, that'll be a conditional use if they apply for one down the road.
And I understand that Supervisor Middleton put us in a very awkward position when she came on as a committee representative, and she talked about the conditional use, and we know what it's going to be. For her to kind of lay that groundwork, understanding with Corporation Counsel, that decision would have been easily appealed and overturned by her commenting before it was actually on the table. So we're clearly in some pretty touchy waters, and this is one of the reasons we're going to need to have some more training on new supervisors. We clearly have a supervisor stepping over her bounds. So I'm going to ask Mike Pritchard, you got one thing to ask. You had a motion, you had a second. We're going to vote on, take it out of the consent agenda to talk about it more. You want to say?
If there's nothing out there for any particular conditional use, why is this rezoning petition being made at this point in time.
That's why you want to take it off of the consent agenda so you can talk about that? All right, we're going to call for a vote. All in favor of taking off the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Not to take it off the consent agenda, say nay.
No.
Nay. Carried. It is not coming off the consent agenda. We're at the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Supervisor Olson?
Second.
Second by Kelly. Takes me a minute, especially if I get a little wound up.
I was going to say Grace, but I thought better.
I say great.
You say grace. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye. Pritchard.
Okay, Pritchard, Duncanson, and Middleton all said not to consider the consent agenda. We'll make that part of the record.
We have a question in the AB conference room.
No questions right now.
No, I need a clarification on this consent piece. Are we saying that?
No, excuse me, Middleton, there are no questions. You can do a point of order if you want, but you can't ask a question.
Okay, point of order. Let me make sure I understand. The consent agenda that we just voted on, we have included it to be A, B, C, and D, and discussion will then follow on each of these individual resolutions. Do I understand that correctly?
No. We've done consent agendas before, and you don't discuss consent agendas. We're at public comment now.
Okay.
Do we have any public comment?
We do in the West. One at a time, step to the table, speak towards the camera, 3-minute limit. State your name.
Ask him if he wants us to talk. Hello, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Very clear.
Okay, great. Do we come up together? Yeah. One at a time. So hello, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Kim Guerin, and I'm a longstanding resident of Alden Township, and I'm here with my good friend, Lisa Erickson. We met through our husbands and raised our families together, and although we had different political views, they didn't really matter because we had so much in common. In recent years, probably like many of you, we've become more and more alarmed with a lack of basic civility all around us. Last year, we joined Braver Angels, a national organization committed to bringing civility back to our neighborhoods and communities. Essentially, Braver Angels brings people together who disagree so they can practice listening in order to understand other points of view. As Wisconsin delegates to the National Convention, we spent 4 days with an equal number of Democrats and Republicans from around the country. We stopped talking past each other and listened, even when it was hard and even when we didn't agree. We walked away with a better understanding of conservative and liberal viewpoints, even our own. And sometimes we even found unexpected points of agreement. And that's why we're here today. We're here on behalf of an active group of concerned Polk County residents who have been meeting regularly for several months to organize a local movement that's part of a much bigger movement sweeping Wisconsin and the country. We think the need for nonpartisan redistricting is something we can agree on. Every 10 years, as in 2020, the federal government counts everyone in the US. The year after the census, in this case 2021, states use this official count to redraw their state and congressional boundaries, the districts that determine how communities are represented at the local, state, and federal levels. Districts are created to have roughly the same number of people. The process to create these districts, redistricting, is vulnerable to gerrymandering. And this is a term you've heard, a term used when districts are intentionally created to benefit some over others. Republicans and Democrats have both practiced gerrymandering. Neither party has been above using redistricting to their advantage. And when this happens, we all lose. In fact, many link the loss of civility to gerrymandering. After all, once elected, politicians confident that they'll never need votes from the other party may have less incentive to genuinely listen and be civil to people on the other side.
Excuse me, that's 3 minutes. Your 3 minutes is up.
All right, the good news is that it doesn't have to be this way. Several states have created nonpartisan redistricting commissions to draw district maps.
Excuse me once. We need to have you give us your name and where you're from.
Lisa Erickson, I'm from Osceola, Wisconsin, as was stated by Kim Guerin earlier.
Yeah, we just need you to state it. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, as dozens of Wisconsin counties are advocating for change, 54 Wisconsin counties have passed a resolution in support of nonpartisan redistricting, including many of our neighbors, Burnett, Washburn, Douglas, Sawyer, Ashland, Buffalo, Chippewa, and so on. Voters in 28 Wisconsin counties have gone further to pass a referendum, including St. Croix, Dunn, Pierce, Rusk, Bayfield, Trempealeau, and Vernon. In fact, Polk County is one of only 17 counties that has not yet passed a resolution or a referendum in support of nonpartisan redistricting. We respectfully ask that you allocate time during the January 19th County Board meeting to consider this issue and adopt a resolution placing a non-binding referendum on nonpartisan redistricting on April 2021 ballot. While our window is short to get the referendum on the ballot, we believe that voters deserve the opportunity to voice their support in the form of an advisory referendum. An advisory referendum would give the voters a choice on this critical issue without obligating the county in any way, regardless of the outcome. Since redistricting will happen this year, we have to act now. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Next. Is there any more public comment?
Anyone else in the West wish to make comment? Please step up to the table if so.
That's it for up here.
Is there no other public comment? Nothing? Okay. Any written public comments, Lisa?
I guess we got a total of 3, one of which was on the fair maps in case they couldn't get into the meeting. And then I had 2 that came in very last minute. One was regarding cables and the other one was regarding, I apologize.
So it wasn't done within the 24 hours?
No, it wasn't done with it.
So were those be distributed?
They were still forwarded along to the supervisors.
Okay.
I just can't guarantee that they have time to read them before.
All right, thank you. County Board Chair's report. So one of the things that I've talked to the administrator and staff here a little bit about my role as a County Board Chair. And, I've been pretty active on some of the committees. I'm going to try to step back a little bit from trying to do too much legislation and working hard on some of these issues and then trying to be chair. I think I'm going to try to just maybe now do a little more, try to do a better job as chair, point out where things aren't going good, and point out some of the things that we need to focus on. I will still attend the meetings I'm on. I'll still be there voting, but I'm not going to actually sponsor any legislation any longer. One of the things that I get calls during the month on multiple issues, obviously the COVID issue, still get a lot of calls with. I had calls this month. Some of the big items were the fairgrounds, recycling center calls about the building project, lime quarry. Another one was the well water here in Balsam Lake. Give an update on that. The village has one of their wells that has the high level in it. They're working with the DNR. I know they've tested the building, and they've sent out letters and they're working on it. They've shut down the well that actually has that metal content that's over the limit, and they're working on it, I think, with staff. And it's not farm related. No CAFO. We got, I met with Endeavor's board, and so Endeavor's was one of the organizations that got concerned when there was discussion about looking at an option to the lime quarry. They have clients that are working there. At the recycling center, and they are going to probably in the next month or two come over to the county board and give a presentation on what they do. They think they can do other options too. They'd like to engage the county. Very good meeting with them. I think it's important that all of us understand what they do there. They do a very good job. Some of the key issues that I'm hearing in the county is still the lime quarry. These are big holes in our budgets. The recycling center, fairgrounds, these all need substantial investments. Building project here at the building. Future trail investments. We clearly still have a major meth epidemic in Polk County that Human Services should be working on. We have drugs being sold right here at this building, and this doesn't seem like we put resources to it, but we just can't stop it. The COVID issue, obviously, and Health and Human Services also has a nuisance ordinance on their agenda. So, a lot of committees have a lot of things that we need to keep working on that are past due. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say is, I'd like to, because of the COVID issue, I'd like to thank the Congress and the federal government as far as getting a handle on this. And as a former even Obama supporter, I think it's time to say thanks to President Trump for rolling out the warp speed and actually starting to put an end to this COVID issue. That's all I have.
Okay. Administrator's report. Okay. Just for the public purpose, I think everyone in this room knows, but for the public, we have included a new conference room for supervisors to attend this meeting to add space. So while we get in here, we try to stay 6 feet apart, but for any of those who might want more space, we've made that accommodation. We'll continue to look for ways to help in that regard. COVID-related reimbursement from the federal government. I'm happy to report that of our total spending is just under $560,000. Between the routes to recovery funds and the CARES Act funds from the federal government, we've been reimbursed approximately $530,000. So less than $30,000 has not been reimbursed because they don't reimburse every penny, but yet 98%. And in addition, we expect the potential for more additional grant aids to cover some additional COVID-related costs. I want to say thanks to Chad, to Lisa McMahon, to our staff, because it was their implementation and their tracking of this and their quick organization of how to track these funds that enabled us to get 100% of those funds reimbursed so that we're eligible for. So great job there. And there are a lot of municipalities and counties and states that put in a lot of stuff that didn't get accepted. And it's embarrassing because they spent that money and now they're stuck having to foot the bill. Our staff did a great job of understanding the rules and doing it the right way. That's worth noticing. The chairman mentioned the high manganese level and the water supply. Just so you know, we shut off our drinking fountains here till we get a handle on this. The good news is we retested the water here and in the other county buildings within the village of Balsam Lake. The levels at the end user was well below the recommended levels. So once we meet with the health department, we make sure we've got a plan that we are safe and we either filter or whatever. Once the health department gives us okay, that's when we'll be reopening the water supply again. I'd also finally like to announce I've named Chad Roberts as an additional deputy administrator on my staff. As you guys know, Chad does a lot of great things. He did a great job with the budget. He is also in charge of our IT department, HR, through the general government division. And he joins our other deputy administrator, Malia Malone. This is a way to get full coverage on the needs that we need. Obviously, Chad will handle, in the event I'm not available, issues dealing with HR, finance, and operations. Malia, her responsibility is corporation counsel. When she steps in as deputy administrator, she has to remove herself as corporation counsel. But certainly she'll still be dealing with key issues such as policy and supervisor interaction, that type of thing. So congratulations to Chad, and we look forward to more great work.
I don't have any appointments, so why don't you just go ahead right into administrative appointments.
The appointment I have, and we discussed the executive committee, is for the Polk County Housing Authority. Mr. Mark Kopp, who has been on that housing authority up to this point, and in fact, he is the current chairman. He's also a active member on our Board of Adjustments, and he has a willingness, and the entire board, Housing Authority Board, and their executive director have asked that he be reconsidered. And so I have made that appointment, and I just need county board approval. You want that right now?
A motion?
I'll
Second. Have a motion to
A
approve.
motion by Jay and a second by Joe.
Hey,
Do you have a
make
question?
comment.
Okay, so I'll take the second by John. We have a comment by Joe.
Yes, I'm still having problems understanding this whole situation. Sure, people were assigned and stuff, but it was brought to the full board for approval, and you said something which his credentials are good. I have no idea who he is. It would be nice if he could be introduced so people can see instead of all of a sudden, here he is.
Well, I can explain, as the administrator said, he did bring it to executive committee. So a committee heard it. You're not on executive, right?
No, and do I hear it? No.
Huh?
Do I hear from it? No. That's what I'm saying. You go to executive committee, all these committees, but nothing gets followed through. You get no reports. You get reports of stuff wrote down, but not every single point is wrote down.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Go ahead, John.
Thursday at 9 o'clock is the Polk County Housing Authority December meeting. It'll be in the conference room at the Balsam Lake site.
You're right behind the museum.
Right, and Mark won't be there, and the reason why he isn't here tonight is he's visiting his daughter in Florida. I spent 10 years on the county board with Mark. He's very well known around the county, and he was really the key person in the development of our human services and justice system and everything. I think anybody can read his resume. And I think it's a fair question. I can ask people to come and be here when we do that. In Mark's case, he's a very well-known quantity here in
The
Polk
point
County.
is,
Your point is that you're saying you don't know about it.
well, the appointments are being made without the whole board knowing about it. Magnifici was one of them. And I was so hot when I heard about that. For the simple fact that you got rid of one of the best employees in the county. He did it. And he didn't know nothing about her hardly. That's what I lay on Vince.
There's some things, Joe, that, you're
There's
just,
some things that we are not supposed to know, but we should know because we represent the people. How am I supposed to tell these people?
so Joe, I can tell you a couple things you do, like I do, and like I know other supervisors do. Everything's recorded now. Every meeting is on an agenda. You can come to any meeting you want. You can watch them live. Every meeting's recorded. you can look at the minutes. If there's something on there that you think is important, you got to show up and sit in on them.
Okay, I can sit in on them, but I have a life too. I have family, I have grandkids that we're raising. I can't do all that kind of stuff. That's why I think it should be right in front of us. Let people know is all I'm asking.
I think you were let known. It was done at the executive committee and now it's done here.
Forget it.
Yeah,
Ain't
I know.
gonna do no good anyhow.
Not on that issue, probably not.
No, not any of you.
Like I said, if you want to sit on executive, you can petition me and I'll change spots with you.
I'd like to petition you on something, but I won't take it, but I'm sure somebody else would.
Well, you can do that too. That's a 2/3 vote. So we got a first, we got a second. We've listened to you now, again, complain about that. All in favor of Mark, say right. Aye.
Aye.
Not approving Mark, same sign. Yeah, passes unanimous. So do we have a motion now to go, are we ready to go into committee of the whole? I need a motion to go into committee of the whole.
Oh, where's our COVID-19 update?
Oh, I didn't see anyone here.
Tanya's in the AB.
Oh, okay. Tanya, you're here? Sorry.
We're going to share the screen here with you. I'll just give a quick update.
Can we get the presenters' rights to share the screen? Madam Clerk?
You got rights now, Bob.
We don't have to. I can just wing it.
That's good.
You should be able to share screen now.
Okay. So it's just going to show you the dashboard really quick. What we're seeing in our trend right now is testing is going down. So not as many people are going in to be tested. Of those going in to be tested, the positivity rate still remains high. It's up there at 36%, but keep in mind that's of those being tested. So, you know, the sick people are going in to get tested, which is good, so we can make contact with them and put them on isolation and get their quarantines out. We do have a total of 21 deaths so far, so we've seen a little bit of a rise in the number of deaths coming. So some discussion amongst our group about when people are going into the hospital, they're pretty sick and not recovering. Some of these have been nursing home residents too. We're finding a lot of outbreaks in our nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So we're doing a lot of management of those outbreaks. We also have business outbreaks too. So that seems to be our theme right now is managing businesses and congregate care settings for those outbreaks and the amount of testing that needs to happen. Otherwise, 11 people in the hospital, total sick number of isolated people is 259, which has gone down significantly. Some of our numbers were up there for a while. So we're just seeing this downward trend. Not sure what to think of it yet, but we'll take another look after Christmas and see if testing goes up or what's happening. And we talk with our hospitals and clinics regularly, and they're seeing the same things, that the people just aren't coming in to be tested. We did get our National Guard sites reissued, so they will be here tomorrow, and they will be, the new location is over at, it's called Building B, over at the highway shop. So it's right behind the hardware store by the gas pumps. We'll have signage out. With the weather getting cold now, the National Guard put some restrictions and criteria on our facility for testing. So they had to have a place that was more than 50 degrees. They also had to have bathroom facilities and that kind of thing. So we were able to connect with the highway people, and Mo graciously offered that space up to us. So we'll be all set to go there. So, you know, if anybody's looking for the free testing, they can go ahead and get that tomorrow here in Balsam Lake. So we're also hearing a lot of talk about vaccinations. So the other part of our job now has turned into vaccine planners. As you may have seen on the news, the vaccine has arrived in the state, and they are busy figuring out how to get vaccine distributed to the most vulnerable populations, and that would be our nursing home residents and staff, along with the workforce who are working in the critical care units in the hospitals with those COVID patients. So those will be the first group of people to be vaccinated. There's about 400,000 healthcare workers in the state of Wisconsin who will be in that 1A criteria group. And the vaccine, the first vaccine to arrive is the Pfizer vaccine that just received emergency use approval. So that dosage is 49,000. Doesn't go very far in the scope of 400,000 needing it, but the Moderna is scheduled to arrive the following week, which is next week. And they've upped that to 101,000 doses in the state. Every week thereafter, we will receive more doses to get those phase 1A people vaccinated. And then we'll move to the phase 1B, which will include our law enforcement, other healthcare workers. They're talking about teachers. They're still fine tuning the definition of that, but I would imagine a lot of our workforce here at the county will be included in that phase 1B. And then after phase 1B, sometime probably in March-ish, we'll do general population, and the health department will be doing both 1B vaccinations along with the general population, and we'll be recruiting injector people to distribute vaccines. So we're in the process of locating a site to do that. There's some waiting time that happens after the shot is given to watch for side effects. So needing a place for people to sit and be observed by our staff. And then also a tracking mechanism for reminding people that they need to come back. So it's, anything but clear to understand. The Pfizer vaccine is a 28-day return for the second dose, and the Moderna is a 21-day return for the second dose. So we're figuring out how all of that plays out in addition to the disease investigations that we're doing. So we do have staff who are on board with it and planning, and no worries about that. So we've already gotten our approval to be vaccinators from the state. So everything's moving along as we would expect it to be.
Any questions for Tanya?
Question?
Go ahead, Mike.
Tanya, regarding the Golden Age Manor and the jail, what sort of statistics do we have in those institutions?
As far as the number of cases that we've had?
Yes.
Was that a yes? Okay. So Golden Age Manor so for a nursing home outbreak, to get out of that outbreak status with the state, you have to go 28 days without a positive case. They made it 23 days and they had a staff turn positive. So that starts their clock over again. I don't know exactly how many numbers of positives they had down there. We would have to ask Dana for that. I know that they're in pretty good shape compared to some of the other assisted living facilities that we are working with now for their outbreaks. And as far as the jail, I don't believe we've had any positive cases over there, although we had a scare yesterday that we've resolved that it wasn't actually a positive case. So the person had tested positive a few weeks back, was not contagious, tested again, and the antibodies stay in and you'll test positive if you're tested within that 3-month time period. So he's showing a positive test result, but he's really not infectious. So we were very relieved that he did not.
Is there been 100% testing?
No, we don't, not at the jail. At the nursing homes, once they're in an outbreak status, they test twice a week. But we have not implemented the 100% testing of inmates when they enter the jail. It's only if they're symptomatic, and we are working right now with St. Croix Regional, but we have some other options in place. I should also mention that we are working with the schools on some saliva testing. So the nurses at the schools can administer a saliva test and get the results a lot quicker if a student or staff person tests or is symptomatic, presenting symptomatic at the nurse's office. So we're just getting that rolling. Unity is our pilot school, so we've delivered some test kits to them this week, and we're getting going on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to go committee of the whole. We'll move. Second by Jay. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. All right. Malia's going to do a presentation on legislation.
It's short and sweet. I won't bore you, hopefully. Also, I think in this part, there was a discussion of open meetings law. Is that right?
Yeah, open meetings law.
Okay, so while we're getting that queued up.
Hold on one second. Bob, can you turn presenter back over to me, please?
Sure.
So while they're getting that situated, about the open meetings law, just a brief reminder that some of the things that as the attorney for the county, I don't want to hear is I've talked to other supervisors and we have the votes. And I'm not saying anybody's done this, but I've heard a few things that I've talked to so-and-so and I know that their vote is this way, but we want to avoid a walking quorum. And what is a walking quorum? It's a series of meetings, each less than a quorum, with the intention of talking about government business that either explicitly or even tacitly ends up being enough folks to be a quorum to decide something outside of a scheduled notice meeting. And that can be a violation of the open meetings law. So whether it's telephone calls to enough supervisors or enough committee members ahead of a meeting to try to say how you're going to vote or that kind of thing, just really that discussion needs to happen at the meeting, at the committee level meeting or the county board. And I just wanted to make that reminder so that we avoid any issues. Can you make it so?
Can we, Malia, can supervisors ask some questions right now?
Of course.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Duncanson.
Sure. I have a question. When we have citizen members on committees, like for example, Health and Human Services, and they're voting members of the committee and everything, but do they count as a quorum for meeting a quorum purposes and walking quorums and all of those other things?
They would be a member of the governmental unit. So yes, as long as they are a voting member, they would have to abide by the same issues in order to avoid a walking quorum. That's a good question.
But if somebody is like an ex officio member of a committee, am I correct in understanding that then they do not count as part of the quorum?
If they have no voting rights, they're still a member. If they are the one trying to coordinate the meeting, in other words, if that ex officio member goes to each supervisor individually and says, how are you going to vote, because they want to influence the vote, they could have an issue.
Even if they're not able to vote themselves?
Right, because they're still a member of the governmental unit. Now, if they're just like casually talking, again, you have to meet two tests, the numbers and the purpose. Numbers, in other words, sufficient to effectuate a quorum, and the purpose. The purpose has to be to discuss government business. If you're just, out to lunch and kind of shooting the breeze and venting or talking, there you don't have that purpose. But if anyone is deliberately, and even if you receive that phone call from another member of one of the committees or the full board, just because you're not aware that the other person might be talking to all of them, make sure that you're cognizant of that and say, well, maybe I'm leaning one way or the other, but I haven't decided yet. Because all of the meat of your discussion should be happening at the public meeting, whether that's at the committee or the board level.
Malia, could you also explain, it's one thing at the board, so we think of the board. Can you explain the walking quorum issue? So in a committee, when you have 3 or 4 people, for example, general government or environmental services or any of them, what really makes that quorum? If you're voting in a committee, sometimes you're just calling one other supervisor to discuss how you're going to vote. If there's only 3 of them, you've just created a problem, correct?
And even 2 of them. So because you can have what's called a negative quorum. And a negative quorum is when if you had a full quorum there, this amount would make a quorum. So what would be a quorum of a 5-person committee? Well, you need at least 3 members to show up. And how many need to effectuate a decision if only 3 members show up? That's 2. So 2 members could be what's called a negative quorum, even though it wouldn't make a quorum as long as everybody showed up. Just be very cognizant of it and careful, and you shouldn't have issues.
And I just want to say, it's happening. We know it's happening. It's going on, and it needs to stop. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm here to briefly talk about how you get legislation here at the county. And this isn't just for the new members, this is for everybody because you changed your county board rules of order at this year's organizational committee meeting. Okay, next slide. Basically, there are 4 ways as supervisors you can go about getting legislation passed. Either you get the county board chairman to say yes and get the ball rolling. You get the county administrator to say yes, and he can get the ball rolling. If they say no, you go to the committee and have the topic put on there. And if the committee says no, your last-ditch effort is to say, I want this placed on the committee of the whole to see if you can get consent amongst the county board to say, yes, we at least want to look at that legislation. And I'll go into more detail on the next slide. I'm not a fan of having a lot of words on slides. I did this so if any of you want me to email this to you so that you can have the meat of the information, that's why it's kind of clustered here. But generally speaking, if there's a non-controversial, routine piece of legislation, it's going to come through staff. Staff is going to say, we have to set the compensation for next term's elected officials, the county clerk, the treasurer. You have to do that. We're going to bring that forward to make sure you guys as a county board get to make decisions on those routine, non-controversial resolutions. So you don't have to worry about those. But when you have an idea, and this is when you've got something, maybe your constituents have been reaching out to you because they're concerned about something, and so you want to start moving a policy forward. And how do you take that idea from an idea to legislation that the county board can act on? And again, as I said, there's those 4 main ways. Going to this county board chairman, and there is authority when you elect a chairman. The agenda for the county board really rests in the chairman's hands. Also that you can go to the county administrator, because the hope is the county administrator will be aware of where staff time is dedicated right now working on current county board issues, whether this is something we can pay for, whether we have the funds for it, whether it's within a certain budget already. So if the county administrator gives you the thumbs up, then it goes forward. And these are all from your rules of order. So this isn't something that I'm making up. This is something that you decided on. So what if you go to the chairman and the administrator and they're like, I don't know, that seems a little touchy right now. I don't think it's a good time for it or what have you. And you still want that to go forward. You take it to the chairman of the committee, that would be the most appropriate committee, and say, I want the topic placed on the agenda. That's where the chairman of that committee doesn't have discretion to say, no, we're not talking about it. This isn't the legislation. This isn't the resolution. This is, I want to talk about developing a resolution. If the committee then says yes, they override for the time being the chairman and the county administrator, and we'll draft the legislation and it will work through the process. And if the committee says, no, we're not going to ask that legislation be drafted, your last option is to go to the committee of the whole, this committee of the whole here at County Board. And if the committee of the whole decides, in other words, they're not deciding the policy direction like on a resolution. They're saying, do we want that resolution drafted so it can be considered in the legislative process? So those are the 4 different ways. If you get through everything and they say no, in other words, the committee of the whole, all you can do is keep, asking for it at the end of a committee meeting, saying, I still would like this considered at the next one, and hope that the chair will do it. But there is authority in being the chair of the committee or the full county board. Yes.
Okay, a question I have, just for clarification, is, when it says to have the supervisor have the topic placed on committee of the whole at the board, and then the board may have a consensus to have the legislation draft.
Right.
It's my understanding, though, that the county board chair formulates the agenda. So what if a supervisor goes to the county board chair, hypothetically, and the county board chair says, I'm not going to put it on the agenda?
So then it would be a point of order at the next county board meeting to say, hey, you don't have the authority to say it's not going on the cow. No, I think the county board chair could say, boy, next month's agenda is insanely packed, so we'll do it, but it won't be until January or something like that. But in your rules of order, the topic itself, but you have to exhaust everything else first. You have to go and ask and go and ask committee.
So eventually you will get the topic, even if everyone says we don't want to talk about it. Eventually you can talk about it.
Yeah.
It might take a few months, but you'll get there.
Okay.
Or someone will get there.
There's just one more slide.
I didn't have anything in mind. I
Sure.
wanted to learn about it.
The other thing to keep in mind whenever you're proposing any policy direction, that any legislation, is the cost. Because right now, if there is a cost and it is not included in the current budget, it might need a budget amendment. And that would take a 2/3 majority. And it would have to be addressed by the General Government Committee before it came to County Board. So even if a policy direction was decided on, how you fund it is a separate thing. So always keep in mind that when you're asking for some of these larger projects, you might be asking staff to step back from what the county board has already asked them to do and start working on something else. And so that's always something to keep in mind, that just because you have an idea, it might not fit within the current budget, and that takes extra steps.
Malia, because we can't see the other people, does anyone up there have any questions with Malia so far, or Mike?
No.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then the final point is to remember that even if there's not a dollar sign attached to it, staff time really equals cost, because you're shifting where their attention is as far as priorities that may have already been set. So even if we can't put a new dollar amount, there is a cost to it. So that's the end of my presentation. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question, Malia, that you just asked on this last, the dollar equals staff time or staff time equals dollars. How do we, as a committee, have that conversation with ourselves when we don't really know what staff costs? I mean, what's the process for that? Because I know that's sort of a new thing that was brought to my attention, that these resolutions need to include staff costs, but I don't know that we're equipped to really put a number on that. How would
No, and that's a valid point. I don't think it's where a supervisor would determine the cost, but with some larger projects, we are then internally with our staff estimating that amount of time and communicating with the administrator and Mr. Roberts, the General Government Division Director, because he's the budget guy, and saying, how much time is this actually going to take? Is this something that would be more cost effective for staff to do, for a contractor to do? We're having all of those conversations. And then once we have an estimated cost, if it is rises to a sufficient level, then we include that on the sidebar of the drafted resolution. And again, it might have to go through the General Government Committee and a budget amendment, depending upon the nature of that cost.
And I guess I'd like to answer that too. Supervisor Middleton, this is not a new thing. This has been done since I've been on the county board. The administrators have said to us, you know, yes, no, we can move that through, not through. It's new for you because you're new, but this is not a new thing.
Okay, so Malia, I have a follow-up question. So what does it look like when it comes out of committee? Does the committee pass a resolution that's sort of the body of the legislation issue that we want, and then it goes to staff for the sidebar piece? Is that how that works? Or do those two get bundled together and then go out of committee?
I guess it depends, to give you a very lawyer answer. You know, the level of complexity. If it's a pretty straightforward concept, like developing a subcommittee to look at a particular thing, that's something where we can quickly draft and that kind of thing. But if it's something that's like an ongoing grass clipping study, for example, that might take several years or something, that's going to take us more time to come up with those numbers.
Use an example of the Trail Advisory, PTAG.
Sure.
There we did an amendment to the budget, and we funded it.
Correct.
Because we knew it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of money.
Right.
It's a good example of one where we actually, you guys did a review, we put a dollar amount in the resolution to fund that specific resolution.
Right, and you know, this shouldn't stymie a committee or a supervisor from putting forth a policy proposal that they want some legislation to enact. We trust staff that once we see that this might be high in cost or shift a lot of staff priorities from one thing to another, we're going to communicate that and make sure that that is known so that when the committee and the full county board makes a decision, they go in eyes wide open, knowing all of the fiscal and staff impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. And I can email that to you guys, or if you want it, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, okay, I will.
Vince, big idea.
That sigh of disappointment.
I remembered your name.
All too often you do. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the time. As I pull up the slide, oh, good, you have it. Let me give you what I'm excited about here. And it's not about this presentation, but it's about what you guys did after the last election and you became the new board. You made a commitment to set goals that weren't just looking at this year. We want to look at this from a longer range perspective. It's easy to set goals for year after year after year, but the problem is you don't really take on bigger challenges and issues. And so by doing that, the tough part now, as staff and as supervisors, is how do we keep that alive? Because it takes reminders. We got to put things on the wall. We got to remind you of what those priorities are. Now, when I have staff meetings, those are the things we talk about, the 4 priorities that you set, and we come up with some ideas. But what also came out of that project was people said, we want to do a game changer. We want to do something that will really make a difference in our lives and in our kids' lives here in Polk County. And so we started investigating how do we take these priorities and turn them into that big thing that's going to make a difference in the county. I apologize for the lousy slides and I apologize for the lack of creativity and name, but I just said, you know, we're talking about it as a game changer and we'll get into that. A game changer is a changing course. It looks not only at the past, but then says, what do we want to become? Not just what's happening this year, but what are we going to be? How are we going to get there? It's going to help a lot of people. It's a long-term commitment and an impact. And that's hard when you have 2-year terms, right? But it's setting a vision, setting a plan that will give us and future boards direction and commitment to carry this thing through. So having a vision, in essence, is going to allow us to plan our own day. Go to the next slide. Okay, the reason this is important. What if we don't have a vision? It's pretty simple to understand. We're at the mercy of outside forces. Things like, you know, we're the county next to the metropolitan area of the Twin Cities. It's going to come here to a certain extent, right? We're already seeing some effects of urban sprawl. Could it be drugs or criminal element that steps in and starts having an impact on our county? The outmigration of our young people, yeah, that happens. We're actually starting to see that slow down a little bit, but it could become worse. We want some of our talented people to stay here. The big box impact store, or big box store impact on our local businesses. These are just examples. If we do nothing, other things can come in that we may say it's not desirable. But we can set our course to improve the living, playing, and working here in Polk County. Today, I just want to gauge your interest. I want you to say, all right, this is a good idea or it's not a good idea. And the other thing is I want to show you that when you go to a game changer, it's going to take a commitment from everybody. How many issues do we have in each meeting, committee meeting and board meeting, where it's a competition, where it's a fight, we're pulling at each other? We're doing things to win as opposed to doing things to make us all better. That's part of politics, I understand. But this is going to take teamwork. And that means that if you want to take that first step, you got to say, we're all in this together. Okay, just as a reminder, your priorities. I know you guys can spit these out like this, but we said reduce crime or increase safety, reduce substance abuse, improve access to broadband, and improve parks, trails, and tourism. All of these contribute to our way of living here in Polk County. It's what makes us special. If we can do these things, our county is going to be in a good place. Now, so far, your staff and you, your committees, have come up with some ideas to help achieve those priorities, shorter term type things, enhance investments in our parks and trails. This is just a few of the examples that have been written about or bubbled up in meetings. Increase community engagement and events, including outreach for youth sports. That would involve public safety. Improve access to public Wi-Fi. Helps our students, helps our businesses, helps our tourists. That involves broadband goals. And then develop diversion programs, marketing campaigns, telehealth targeted at youth and adults that can affect their drugs. We look at all these things and say, can we merge these into anything? Can we set a long-range goal that affects all of these? Well, so here's something to consider, and this came up in a discussion when we look at how we're using our resources. We're looking at where we're spending our time and energy, and we're trying to say, rather than spend something here, rather than spend something here and just do some little things, what if we target it? The idea is to develop a centerpiece complex in Polk County, featuring things like recreation, trails, sports, agriculture, and community opportunities. So think of this as a complex where people could participate in sports, youth tournaments. What happens on Saturdays in the summer around here? We see Highway 8 lined with cars coming this way. We don't even notice how many cars are packed with our kids leaving the county. They're going to their sports tournaments in the Twin Cities, Hudson, wherever. There's a lot of that goes on. How about a hub for trails? The PTAG committee is on this mission, and it's a great one. How do we bring all these trails and recreational places together? This complex could be a hub where trails could come in and out. If people came to this complex, they could travel on any trail in or out. I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead, Brad.
I just have a comment. Something like this is going to require accommodations for people that I don't think the county can currently support.
And accommodations such as?
Hotels, motels,
right.
Places when the people are here, where are they going to stay?
You're exactly right. What do you think will happen in a community if a centralized complex hosting people to come for events? What do you think that community would be a candidate for? Hotels would probably immediately, the private sector will come in and say, let's put a hotel in. Food, the hospitality industry, you know, and this is not we're not going to build this next year. This is a longer term idea this is just simply the first step. And we'll get into what the next steps are, but I think you'll see an excitement build amongst the county communities to say, hey, if we put that here, how can we help make this successful? And they're going to consider, will it bring jobs? Will it bring businesses? Will it bring people? And that's what I get into a little bit later. I also just want to point out real quickly, don't think of this as simply a sports complex. This idea, it could be anything, and that's what we will decide later, but it could be things like rodeos, agri-centers, agribusiness centers, activities that can help our farming community. It could be a lot of things. Now, I've gone on and looked at examples throughout the country, and I see everything, you know, arranged. So it would depend on a thorough study as to what's needed or what would be most impactful here in Polk County. The other thing I'll say, this will not be a Polk County project. This will be a project, if we choose to continue looking at it, of a multi-layer of government involvement, private sector, organizations, individuals, and charities. For example, local communities would be interested, counties interested. There will be state grants and involvement because of the impact it will have here. Polk County is a great location right next to Minnesota. There is also a thing, just as an example, a grant that FEMA provides, that if we build a building and part of that is designated as a safe haven during storms and those types of things, there is a substantial grant that they would help pay for parts of this as well. So this will be really a complex combination of finance, finding resources, and developing a feasibility study that will determine what's the best way to go about it. Okay. Anticipated outcomes. For a center like this, we would expect more visitors to come to Polk County for events, tournaments, trails, meetings, whatever it might be. Think about the local youth. Facilities that we don't have an abundance of in Polk County, for example. You know, and I did this executive committee, but you all know how many Olympic-sized swimming pools we have in the county? One. We have one close at Unity, but it's like 4 feet short. That's another story as to why they made it short. Maybe it's 4 inches short. It's just a small amount. But hockey. So when you think about those sports, think about equestrians. Think about, you know, and this really came up when we talked about the fair. Someone suggested, would the fair be interested in this? And I'm not saying that's what we're doing. But rather than have a horse facility or a cattle facility that's used 1 week or 2 weeks out of the summer, what if it was being used 12 months out of the year? And we would have those facilities being used in different ways. Visitors and tourists, and I'm one of them. When I first visited Polk County, the first thing I started thinking of is, wow, wonder if I could make a living over here. And I thought, wonder if I could live here and commute to work. And I started thinking about those things. So when you bring people over here and they see a state-of-the-art facility and they see a county that's committed to growth and committed to helping youth, helping seniors in the community, developing businesses in the community, people are going to start asking that question and say, I want to live here. Can I find a house or do I have to build one? More visitors, more residents.
Does this work in Clam Falls? Supervisor Olson?
No, not a chance.
Okay. Increased demand, so you can go to the next slide. All right, here's, to me, is the fun part. Big ideas require a big commitment. And if interested, this is just the first step. If this is something that this group, the executive committee, felt good about it, if this group says, I'm interested, let's investigate. I and my staff will take the next steps to start looking at investigating alternatives that are out there. There are consulting companies that do this sort of thing, all kinds of different things. We could investigate who would be the best at identifying the needs of Polk County, what the structure might look like, how we could finance it, whether it have to be all private or if it could be all government, or it's probably going to be somewhere in between. And they could give us ideas. Potential sites, I have no idea. It could be anywhere in this county, but this board can give this group that would do the feasibility study priorities. What's important to us? Here are the things that we want it to do, and then they can investigate, or we can investigate where are the potential sites, and then the board makes the final approval. But we'll be gaining community input. There are communities right now that I think would step up and say, we'll do that. We got the land. Location, just my early assessment, all I can tell you is it probably needs to be close to a community, a village or a city, because then you have the infrastructure. But we have communities that are designed such that we have space available to them in abundance in some areas. So it's just a matter of putting it close there to have access to water and sewer and those types of things. We don't know. We'll have various options and financial strategy. The timeline, like I said, this is going to take years, not months, but years. But what we can do today is say, let's take that first step and let's investigate. Next slide. Think of all those things you guys debate vigorously. And part of this idea came up when the survey was done and people said, I don't know if I trust the guy next to me in this room. And we look at this and say, this is something with big potential. It meets your priorities and goals, and it's going to take something for all of us to pull together on. This will not be something that you say, let's do it, and you wash your hands up and wait for staff. We'll all be involved. Every committee would be involved in those things. General government, financial, broadband, environmental services, trail integration, recreation assessment, HHS, youth, adult program development, keeping our kids off of drugs, getting them healthier, keeping them here in school. Public safety, public works, facilities, program development, executive committee is going to be a lot of community outreach, involvement, and public relations. So, the big idea. It's multiple years of plan and development. Start now with little investment, a little bit of hard time. Evolve the plan as we learn. That's going to take all of us pulling it together. Do we want to take that first step? Look at it to that next level.
We have questions for the administrator, I'm guessing. Fran?
So, if I understand this correctly, and please let me know if I don't, you're viewing as the first step of this for some type of board consensus moving forward, say like by hiring a consultant to coordinate what we prioritize and investigate that, or are you talking about staff doing this, or how does that work?
The first step would not be hiring a consultant, but rather looking at what is out there. What are the possibilities, gaining a little clarity, and then bringing it to you to say, we're going to put out an RFP to these several consulting firms. No commitment yet on funds, but it's like, here's what we think. Do we want us to contact them? And I would be in contact with them to say, here's what they provide, here's what they do. So not asking for any commitment of funds yet.
You know, as I sat on a maybe 10 years ago when we did the comprehensive plan in Polk County. I don't know, was that 10 years ago? Bob would know. Bob, do you know how long ago that we did the comprehensive plan?
8 years ago. 8 years ago? 8.
Yeah, and so 8 years ago, I know, and one of the items on that comprehensive plan was doing something like this. We had broadband, we had a YMCA type facility, we had higher education. So to me, I think it does fall within our comprehensive planning that our county said that was something we would want to do something like this. So just throwing that out there that we have some record on that. Fran?
Is the idea then to bring it forth to the various communities and ask for their buy-in? Is it also going to, at some point, ask for a financial commitment from them as well?
That's all up in the air, except that I think part of the feasibility study is to say, what would benefit the county and the citizens the most? And then to say, where should it go? Well, that would depend on which community would be interested in it. And I suspect from talking to some communities in the past and now, they would say, boy, that would be great next to my community. And then in this financial planning, there are options. A community may say, if we want it here, we'll give you the land and we will also provide something. They might offer that to get it. I mean, that would be part of it. And in return, they're going to have visitors, businesses sprout up, so there's some incentive for them to have it. The other thing, though, is I think financing and all that is really going to depend on what makes the most sense. What's the size of it going to be? You know, I don't envision 50 softball fields like in Blaine, but could it be, you know, a certain number of fields? Schools, I think, would be extremely interested in this. It's not competition to them. It's an opportunity for them to have better access to facilities that they don't have. They could partner. Let's say it was a sporting tournament, a softball tournament or a baseball tournament. We wouldn't need 16 fields someplace, but if we just had 4 or 5 to centrally locate, or 2, I don't know, but then teams could easily jaunt out to different schools in the vicinity. And, you know, in part of tournaments, they might say, hey, we got to run out to Amory, play on their field today, 15, 20 minutes away, boom, you know, and then they come back if they win and that type of thing. So schools would be getting some benefit from this.
My friend, I think too, what you're saying, it is a board's decision. You know, it's not the administrators, it's not staff. The county, it's the county board. It's going to be up to us in each committee to develop. Before an RFP would go out, I think every committee would want to say, these are the things that we think are important that we want to have looked at. And before staff could do anything, the county board would need to, I think this would be a committee of the whole project. This would not be, oh, this committee's running with this idea. I think this would be a committee of the whole. We would all talk about it. We'd get updates on it. And before an RFP is developed, I think every committee should kick the can and to see if there is good ideas out there that should be part of an RFP someday to say, hey, this is the list. And, you know, and when we will tell staff with a resolution that, let's start moving forward with an RFP. And an RFP doesn't mean we're still spending any money. We're spending staff time. Staff says right now they can do this and they can put it on our committee's agendas and we can talk about it for a couple months and come back to this committee of the whole in a few months from now And maybe we have some recommendations. Maybe we say, you know what, this isn't the right time to do it. We got a lot of other issues right now. Supervisor Kelly? Oh, no, don't. I was coming with that. You didn't have to beat me to it.
We'd have to also make sure that we're involving the towns and villages in the county too, because they're also making plans for the future. And it would be nice that, you know, they have that same idea in mind. You know, you don't want the town of St. Croix Falls or the city of St. Croix Falls running off. You know, you've heard me say, I drive down the hill in Taylor's Falls on a Sunday and you can't get another car on the street. Then you cross the bridge and go into St. Croix Falls and it's like driving through a cemetery.
St. Croix Falls,
Yeah, and so it's how do you work with the towns that might have interest too, to get their ideas too.
Yeah, that's how the planning will work.
Yeah.
That's what we
This
would
is
do.
not I don't want to give the impression that, you know, hey, let us put the train on the track and we're going. This is an evolve.
Yep, thing.
Because they all have comp plans too.
Yep, they do.
And they all have growth plans, they all have comp plans.
But, and I'll just throw it out to you. The question is do you see this as one potential avenue to get us where we want to be, to take a little more control of how our community develops, to get more people, families, to come over here?
Just jump in, John.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the biggest asset that we got to start with is we're a county that's got an interstate park in our county. And everything along the St. Croix River is actually public by the DNR and the Wild Riverway. And that's something that few counties in any state has. And the biggest question at the tourist industry all the time is every day is questions on people all around from the United States. There's a lot of them have a goal. I want to go in every interstate park in the United States and different things like that. So the biggest spur we really have is having the advantage of interstate park in our county. We haven't really used that to much potential.
So Vince, you're looking for, in the committee of the whole, that you get a consensus that we would, I mean, first off, personally, I think it should say something different than a big idea, but that we put it on our agendas. I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but would it be okay that we would put this idea on agendas for a couple months on our work plans? And at least we discuss it in our committees for a couple months and come back? Jay?
To keep it going.
Just keep it going for a while? The executive, go ahead, Jay.
I think maybe if we start making some presentations by resolution to or keep this going forward, maybe I think we've maybe done enough in the committee as a whole, and I'll go back into the result and get something activated and
So someone will make a motion.
by motion.
All right. Does anyone else have any more questions about this idea? Anyone upstairs or Mike?
This is Mike. I'll just weigh in a little bit. Footnote to John Bonaprise. I think it's true that one of the things that, the thing probably that Polk County has that a lot of other places in this country and the world don't have is our natural resources, including the river, our parks, our trails. We have our Parks and Trails Task Force Committee, and I think it was in their mandate to look at connecting with adjacent counties and other trails and so on. And there is the old saying, you build it, they will come, but that I think would attract more people. By the same token, you can look at Wisconsin Dells, and that originally was slated to be the first park, the first state park in Wisconsin, and it didn't happen. and it looks like Dolly land more than it does like a natural resource as the way it's developed. And I'd probably be rolling over in my grave by the time it happened, but I would be absolutely opposed to having that type of commercial development either in or close to the St. Croix Scenic Riverway.
All right. Well, do we have
Be careful how it develops.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not, and I think I didn't bring them, but I have examples of communities, and they range from a rural area in South Dakota to the middle of a big city. They'll do these types of what I'm calling a centerpiece complex. And no, this would not be something. This would not be the start of a Wisconsin Dells or anything like that.
I kind of like anything connected with the word Dolly.
All right, do we have a motion to
I make the motion to go back in the
open session? We got a second on that? Joe? All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
We're back in open session. So Jay, do you want to make a motion?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to just basically to keep this going. And motion being that you put it on the agendas for some ideas of pursuing to pursue this type of a big idea, and also maybe to direct our whatever you do, to contact as an outreach to some of the communities in the county, maybe to get some input from them in reference to this idea, and get them starting to think about it also. So by the next county board meeting, maybe in February, we'll be able to have some input and some idea in the nucleus of what we might be looking at least for the beginning of something like this. We're not gonna be able to open up everything all at once and get it developed. This will take a long time, but there are certain things that are already starting these type of programs. The biking trails, the ATV trails, these type of things are already starting to in conjunction with that. Fishing contests, there's a number of different things that are already going that once we all reach out a little bit, we'll find out that there's some interest at the facilities. I mean, communities, I'm sure that some of these major projects, as you'll find out from communities, they don't have the land available generally. Much left, that they got industrial parks and things like that. But it's pretty hard for a community in the boundaries of their area that they don't have a large enough area to accommodate 3 or 4 ball fields, for an example. That's not the question. So we've got to reach out eventually.
Point of order. Could you repeat the motion?
Involved also. So
Yeah, we had a point of order on you, Luke.
what is it?
Could you repeat the motion?
Can you repeat the
It's
motion?
kinda hard to hear. Didn't you take? Would you read it back? Yeah, I didn't complete the motion, but just to keep it on the agenda and keep our administrative staff, or get them as a reach out, just to get started hopefully for the February meeting to have it online.
So a simple motion, Malia, can you help us with the motion, what we think we're saying? It's going to be on committees and we're going to keep it on committee of the whole.
Yep.
Is that good enough?
That would work.
Russ, is that acceptable? That's the motion?
Yeah, that'll work.
I'll second. Joe, you want to second that? Now, Jay, do you have anything more to add to that?
No.
That's why I seconded it. Upstairs, Doug or Amy, do you guys have anything, or Mike?
No, thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep it on the agenda, so let's just vote on all.
Discussion on the motion?
Yeah, you want to talk some more, John, about it?
One thing I think we should be cognizant of is a name. Most of our young people come up with better names than we do. So if we can discuss this maybe at a town meeting or in a community. There's a lot of people, we've all got outside contacts. Don't be afraid to talk about this. And you know, we're thinking of a name for this too. When I was senior in high school, a gal named Trohagen was looking for a name. One of my classmates, and she happened to be a young girl from Chicago that sent in the name Trohagen. She got $50 back in 1953.
We were thinking Bonaprise Complex.
Names are tricky and they're attractive. They're very attractive.
I'm sure we can work that out through committee or at next committee of the whole. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Big idea. We're on 19. Possible possible action on committee items. General government. Resolution 5820. Resolution modified. I don't know if we can do both of these together. Go ahead, Supervisor.
I just had a question after we discussed 19A at the General Government Committee, and then as I was reading, doing some further reading through there, is this kind of a?
I tell you what. Why don't we get a motion and a second before we get into discussion?
Okay.
So I just want to know if we want to handle both of these at the same time. It sounds like there's specific discussion on A. Supervisor, we need a motion to bring A.
I so move.
We have a second? Second by Duncanson. All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now there can be discussion on it. So we're going to bring that by itself. Chair, do you want to talk about this first, or Supervisor Duncan has questions? What do you want to do?
I would defer to Chad, I guess. I mean, he's more aware of it.
Okay. So Supervisor Duncanson, then you can talk to Chad directly.
Sure, it's just clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
When we discussed this at the committee meeting, I came away from thinking that this resolution was geared more towards just kind of cleaning up some language and reaffirming and putting in writing things that were currently or already in practice that came about as the result of there being a general government director position. But as I was reading through this, I had some questions come to mind. Is this a reassignment of duties from current staff? Is this like taking duties away from current staff members and giving them to you? Or is this just like a reaffirmation of what you're already doing?
It's a reaffirmation of what we're doing, and it's the division model. So previously we had Andrea Jarek, who was the Deputy County Administrator and the Employee Relations Director. And then we had Maggie Wickery, who was the Finance Director. Now we have a General Government Director. So we looked at the personnel policies and the financial policies. And in the personnel policies, everywhere where it was HR Director, which was Andrea Jarek, has been changed to General Government Director. But there are a couple of exceptions in there where I've pushed it down to HR Manager, because when you combine roles, you got to shed some of the duties and pass them down. So there's some delineations in there for the HR Manager. But no, everything that's in here was presently duties within those offices. So there's no new duties there. But it is, with the personnel specifically, there's a few points pushed down that are delegated down to the HR Manager, just because you can only have so much on your plate at one time. So just a synopsis, and I guess I can give a synopsis on both, even if you have to act separately. Maybe that's the easiest way. Annually, we're going to start looking at the finance and personnel policies and have them reviewed by the General Government Committee in December. There may be changes, there may not, but as operations change, it's important to make sure our policies reflect our operations and reflect best practices and things like that. So I did that with both this and the financial policies. One thing that wasn't, as the division model has been enacted, there's a lot of changes that have to take place. Policy is one of those. Policy should reflect the model as well. So a lot of it in these two policies is title changes. There's things like it was the director of buildings, now we have a facilities manager instead of a director of buildings. There's some grammatical errors I found, capitalization, that kind of stuff. There's the purchasing policies that you adopted in June that are entombed in this and footnoted. There's some things, as I mentioned, that I pushed down to the HR manager daily duties. The one key thing in the personnel policy that changed is our old policy referenced in Annex M regarding code of ethics, which had never been created. By default, under Wisconsin law, public employees fall under Wisconsin statute 19.59. So we specifically entombed in these policies that employees were to abide by Wisconsin statute 19.59. The financial policies, no, the changes you approved on purchasing before. There's a contract approval clarification on who can enter into contracts, who can sign, who has the authorities. There's a clarification regarding certificate of insurance liability requirements. And those changes were put in there to help facilitate community services, more streamlined activities. We met with Corporation Counsel. I consulted with insurance. We're just trying to make the policies current and also trying to smooth business practices so that departments can function as efficiently as possible. Everybody was provided I provided the inline changes so you all could see what was changed in them. And then the resolutions address each point. So I guess if there's points, any further points on the policy changes.
I got just one thing to add, and that's kind of to my list that I'm going to start bringing up. You know, I've heard supervisors talk about, and I'll use as you just used the facility. What's the facilities coordinator?
He's facilities manager now.
Facilities manager, and is that Mo Norby?
No, that is Rod Polk.
Rod Polk. So, okay. So one of the things that I've heard in this divisional government, supervisors have said it seems like some county directors seem like they've gotten more of a load than it used to be. And for example, the highway commissioner, I don't know what his title is. Would that be affected by this personnel policy stuff?
Well, that stuff was done. So, for example, with the buildings, used to Deb Peterson was the director of buildings, and that was a separate department from highway. So there were certain things Deb did.
I understand, and that's where I think some of the question from some supervisors I've heard is that there's certain now where there used to be kind of spread out. For example, the highway commissioner, or what's his title?
Public Works Director.
Public Works Director is in charge of the buildings, in charge of the lime quarry, in charge of the recycling center, in charge of building remodel. You know, so there's a lot on certain people's plates.
Right.
You know, where they're carrying a big load. And is that reflected in this personnel policy on who's doing what? And was that the county's? Was that our intention when we did divisional government? We voted to break it up into divisional government. But, you know, and I don't know if that's an administrator's issue. You're asking us to sign policy. Can you address that?
I guess my response to that would be the divisional model was to address span of control, because when it was adopted, the administrator span of control was 23 people. I believe it was 23 department heads. So the idea with the divisional model is much like a military model where you have a commander and then a lieutenant and then a sergeant and then you have a squad. So you now have the administrator, you have the 4 directors that the administrator has a span of control over. Then the directors each have managers or department heads under them that they have a span of control over. And then those department managers have supervisors that they have a span of control over. So there's some things that I think in policy, they've always been there delineated to a certain person and should be, in order that when the person carries out the duties, they have that policy protection. For example, I designated down the administration of the wage scale when we're hiring people down to the HR manager. So we said, you know, we established the budget up here, but you've got to have somebody who on a daily basis when they're hiring and all that can make the job offers and empower them to do it. Before that rested up here with the employee relations director. Now that duty's been pushed down a little bit. I think
that's not county. So when we voted, how long ago did we vote on this divisional government? When did we change the way?
I think that was before me, so maybe 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago.
It was a while ago.
That was
3 years.
3 years
3
ago?
years is correct.
3 years ago, we voted for this. So your detail, you're saying it's not really up to county board. It's up to you, staff and administrator, to decide how to delegate this work, right?
It is, and there should be delegation, although I think there's some duties like financial duties or HR duties that you better protect the positions carrying them out if it's contained in policy. If the policy says you have the right, if the base wage is $10, but the midpoint is 15, then this manager has the right to hire them between 10 and 15 if that's what it takes to get them. So those are the kind of things. Now, on a day-to-day basis, any good leader knows what their span of control is and delegates out some of their duties because nobody can do everything in one day. And I think that's what the management and the daily delegation comes down to. If you say, okay, our division has 5 projects. If general government had 5 projects going on at once, I can't manage 5 projects. That's unrealistic. So you designate, okay, I want you to be the project leader here, you to be the project leader here.
And you may have a division director presenting for all of those because you get the committees, you sometimes don't want everybody and their staff coming. So you may recognize one division director for taking a lot, but yet their underlings are doing a lot of the work for them.
For example, we had the IT director present the project he's done with IT security. That's within general government, but the resident knowledge rests with the IT director and that staff. So he presented on it, that kind of thing.
John?
Mr. Chair, and I think now is that the regional government fits in with both of these resolutions. When the divisional government was addressed to us, there was several committees were eliminated. And we didn't know how, at that time, how it was going to work, but seeing some things clearly aren't functioning right.
What committees got eliminated?
For instance, the agriculture committee got eliminated. There was a 5-person agriculture committee plus 2 farmer advisors, non-voting advisors. That was from the beginning of Polk County government. And we were told that that would be absorbed into the highway and public protection and part of it into the environmental. And as a consequence like that, agriculture in Polk County has completely been eliminated.
All right, so what your point is you would like to see that committee get brought back into the system somehow.
And Vince and I talked for 2 hours this morning, and the people out there know that agriculture has been eliminated. Maybe it should have been, now that we see how it's working and what has happened, maybe it should be the ag, highway, and public protection. So there'd be some ad hoc or some kind of influence. But the #1 industry in Polk County is not represented.
I think if you would ask for that to be put on the executive agenda.
Yes, I asked Vince about that this
Joe,
morning.
you want to know, if you want to know something about that, come to the executive meeting, just a heads up.
Wake him up.
Excuse me, Joe, do you want to have it to go somewhere else?
Well, I'd like to see it go to what Johnny said, to the public protection and
That's not
highway.
really,
It's not on the agenda, but we're,
Excuse me. Can I call,
Jay, yes.
Can I call the question?
Yes, you can.
I'm calling the question. On the motion.
Yeah, and the motion was about personnel policy.
Right. And it was seconded, we were discussing it. I'm calling the question.
All right. So the question's been called. All in favor of resolution 5820? Motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have a motion to discuss 59-20.
So move.
Okay, discussion. We just had a discussion. Is there anything from staff that wants to ask Chad about 5920? Anyone upstairs?
I just have a quick question. Chad, it looks to me that this, to ask the same question that Brandon, looks like it's kind of a cleaning up of things that were already going on. Is that a correct reading?
Yes, ma'am. One thing about policy is you should revisit it annually to make sure it reflects what's going on and what the purpose of the organization is. So this is one thing that we'll start doing on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mike?
Mr. Chair? Just a quick, did this get, either one of these get discussed in a committee?
Yeah, they were, it says right on here, General Government Committee. There's a recommendation to send them to the board and approval.
Yeah, I don't remember that the documents themselves were distributed, but maybe they were. I don't know.
They were emailed to everybody.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor, 5920, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, carried. Under supervisors' announcements, I would really hope that supervisors that are on outside committees would give us their announcements on what they're doing. And I know we don't really have it on our agenda anymore, but if we could use supervisors' announcements to give us updates. If you guys are going to outside committees, it'd be nice to know a little bit about them. Supervisor Duncanson?
Sure. I attended the meeting with our Nail Memorial Humane Society last night. They're still working on a costly repair issue with a kennel, and like all nonprofits, they're looking for a good deal. So if anybody knows anybody in mind who does that type of work, steer them to our nail.
What kind of work?
They have a kind of a holding quarantine kennel that needs a portion of a wall rebuilt and some cement work done. And they've been wrestling with that for a while and looking at trying to get some estimates. The estimates they have looked at are a little pricey. Due to COVID right now too as well, they've cross-trained some staff and some of the board members in case the staff would come down with COVID, of who would be able to come in and take care of the animals and clean up after them, as well as something that they're working on. Because of COVID, they're not taking dogs in from Texas like they have been right along. There is somewhat a shortage of adoptable dogs in this part of the state. And like many of the other shelters, our mail gets shipments of dogs in from Texas because they have a much better chance of being adopted here. But that's temporarily on hold, and that's going to be revisited after the first part of the year. So
That's very helpful to have that kind of information shared.
I can give you an update.
Supervisor Kelly.
On the Historical Society and Museum. We met, I attended my first meeting on December 3rd. We met before that just virtually to talk about the MOU, which I passed on, so that's being looked at. I did participate in an interview. I was part of the interview process for the new museum director, and the board approved making an offer to this person. Now, it will be in January. She's working right now as a contractor and will become an employee, a full-time director in January. So we made progress there. So it's been interesting meeting everybody online.
Sure. Any other outside committees attended? Joe?
I talked to Laura from ADRC today. I did not make the meeting, I'm chair of that one. And she was telling me about some funding that she just is going to get. I am not going to say it because I wasn't right at the table to write it down and stuff, but she said she was going to email all the people on the committee, and I will give Vince a copy of it, but it's a very substantial amount of money that we're going to get extra.
Any other outside committees attended, John?
I attended the Alden Town Board meeting last Thursday, and the Alden Town Board voted 5-0 to have the clerk write a recommendation of not to sell the lime quarry, and the administration, and I believe most of your supervisors told me that the board told me they were going to send that clerk's letter to the supervisors and administration. They had a long discussion on that. The lime quarry is in the town of Alden, and they were very emphasized about keeping the lime quarry as a no sale. Even on the lease, or I heard them talk about encouraging a lease or management from hiring a manager for the lime quarry like there used to be.
Any other supervisors attend outside meetings, Russ?
I didn't actually attend any other outside meetings, but under 9A, you do have it on the agenda. You missed it.
Oh, I missed supervisors.
Well, the supervisors reports from outside meeting attended, but it probably should be here. Yeah, supervisors announcements at the end of the meeting. It kind of doesn't break it up. Sure. And just recognize Brad Olson for sitting in for Kim O'Connell on the executive. That's going to be another responsibility for him until Kim gets back. So appreciate him doing that.
I did attend one other one.
Okay.
The Village of Centuria, their board, I attend their board meeting because they're in my district. And it's nice to be able to give them updates on what's going on here and then hear what's going on there too. So they're really concerned about recycling because evidently they don't, for some reason, and I don't know why, they don't get those bins that are dropped off, county bins for recycling in Centuria. And I couldn't answer any questions on it because I don't know why, but that was their big question.
Mr. Chair, I have one update.
Yeah, one thing to say is the recycling thing has been on general government's agenda. I'm not sure where it'll be, but that's where that's kind of being handled.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Middleton?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with John. I did attend the 8-day DRC meeting and we went over budgets and year-end stuff, but one of the take-home messages was because of COVID, they've had to do a little bit of scrambling on the food delivery side of their services. So if anybody knows or themselves are willing to help do deliveries, talk to Laura or message me. I can get you in touch with them, but I'm going to help them and they're going to need other people to kind of take different spots because they get drivers that, can't do it. So if you're interested, let Laura or me know, I guess. Thanks.
Supervisor Rowdy, do you go to any meetings?
No, I didn't attend any.
Supervisor Pritchard?
What did the Federated Indian Head Libraries meeting in November? They're meeting by Zoom, and there was no earth-shaking development coming out of that meeting.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor by saying aye? Aye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
What?
Executive meeting.